There are a lot of questions that you as a homeowner should be asking prospective listing agents when you interview people to list your home, from pricing strategy to, what is your knowledge about the current market, how are you going to deal with multiple offers, all kinds of things. But there's one very, very important question, that most homeowners don't know to ask. And that revolves around working with appraisers. So in essence, Mr. or Mrs. Listing Agent, what is your strategy of working with the lender's appraiser? And the reason I say that is because the appraiser has an awful lot of control over the value of your home. And unless the listing agent knows how to work with the appraiser, interview the appraiser, you're going to possibly leave either money on the table or it could ruin the deal. So what I did was I interviewed a local appraiser. He also owns his own appraisal company. Jay Josephs is going to be joining here in a few moments to talk about the importance of your listing agent working with the appraiser. So listen to Jay. You're going to get a lot of information. You're going to learn the importance of asking that question. So stay tuned. I'll talk to you soon. Hi there. Joe Janus again here with HomeSmart. I am here with Jay Josephs of Josephs Appraisal Group. Jay has been in the Valley for a number of years. He owns Josephs Appraisal Group. And we're talking about the importance of the listing agent meeting with and talking with the appraiser before the appraiser comes to the home, what to do with comparables, updates, data like that. Jay, please feel free to give us your thoughts, opinions, your experience on why that is so important, especially in today's market.
Yeah, so for sure, you want a realtor who is taking an active role in the appraisal process. Because the narrative for so long has been, hey, the appraisal is going to happen, you have no say, there's nothing you can do about it, and it just happens. But the reality is when you're working with a realtor who has that perspective, the seller suffers. You want an agent that is following a few steps to make sure that first it's the right appraiser, and second, that the information is useful and we're providing good stuff to the appraiser to make sure they're using the best data. But I think it really starts with having a geographically competent appraiser.
Okay.
And my guess is somewhere along the way, you've been part of a transaction where the transaction has suffered because the appraiser didn't understand the neighborhood, especially in these historic neighborhoods, because they're also nuanced. And when you get a call from an appraiser about a transaction you just worked so hard to put in escrow, you don't know how that appraiser was assigned, right?
Right.
It could be whoever's the cheapest, whoever is next up in the rotation, whoever's fastest. In most cases, that appraiser was not signed by a method that made sure that the right appraiser is doing the job. And so if you're next up in the rotation as the appraiser and you live in Apache Junction and all of a sudden you get an order in Encanto Palmcroft, guess who's learning on the job in Encanto Palmcroft?
Not on my seller's dime.
That's what's happening too much. And I'll say this, Joe, the number one reason I see an appraisal where the conclusion's wrong in my mind is because the appraiser didn't understand the neighborhood they were appraising in. So working with an agent who understands that and understands that there's a way to get involved in that process is really important. And I think you want to work with an agent that'll spend a few minutes on the phone interviewing these realtors or interviewing these appraisers.
Right.
And making sure they understand the neighborhood. If I were an agent, I'm a failed agent, but if I were an agent, I put a deal in escrow and I got a call from the appraiser and it's a difficult property or difficult neighborhood, I would want to make sure that appraiser's the right appraiser for my job. So that's the first thing.
Okay, what would be some questions you would ask the appraiser? We have to take into account, obviously personalities, professionalism. What are some things that you would ask before they got to the property?
So there's three things I want to understand when I'm interviewing the appraiser. I want to know that they have locational expertise. So my favorite question to ask an appraiser is, can you please give me an idea what geographical boundaries you're going to use to select your comps?
Okay.
Because if you don't know the neighborhoods, you can't answer that question.
Gotcha.
So you just want to test them. And the answer might not be exactly how you want it, but as long as they know the general boundaries, that's a good starting point that you likely have a geographically competent appraiser.
Okay.
Second thing I would want to ask is what level of certification they have, because I want to know that I'm getting an experienced appraiser. especially now, you don't want a trainee. You don't want a guy who's just shooting the pictures, who's not even a trainee, who's just a picture. And I personally don't think I want a licensed appraiser, because you can now get a license to appraise in 6 months.
Okay.
And I just remember how bad I was 6 months into this business, 2 years into this business. I learned stuff today, 30-something years in this business. I wouldn't trust my transaction to somebody who was doing this less than 2 years. So I would only want to work with somebody who's certified. So I would ask that question, what level of certification do you have? If it's a trainee or an Uber driver or somebody who's licensed, I would hesitate before I let them in.
Okay.
The last thing that I would say that I would want to know is I would want to know that the appraiser is willing to spend some time with me, the agent, at the inspection to go over cons. Because there's appraisers out there who will they say, no, I just want to use my lockbox. I want you to leave me alone. I don't want your information.
Right.
They're depriving you of doing the best job for your client.
Understood.
The third question I would ask is, I'd like to meet you at this property and spend 5 minutes going over some information I'm going to prepare for you.
Right.
I hope that's okay. And if they say no, I wouldn't let them into my house.
Okay. So at the end of the day, let's say any of those things, you're just not comfortable with this appraiser.
Yeah.
Process is go back to the buyer's agent. Buyer's agent goes to the lender and says, hey, not comfortable with this appraiser. We need to find another one.
Yeah, and it usually works. I have a relationship with Optian, which is an international appraisal management company. And if I got that call, if you called me and said, hey, I just had this bad conversation with the appraiser, as long as it's about geographical competency and professionalism, I'll work to get you another appraiser.
Understood.
And I know that might slow the process down by a day, but it's worth it.
Sure.
It's worth it to make sure you have somebody who's professional and geographically competent.
Understood. Because at the end of the day, and I'm saying this because I have experience, I just dealt with this not too long ago with a current client, is the agent didn't do any of these things. And what ended up happening was that the home did not appraise for the contract price. We had to go do the rebuttal, came back a little bit higher, but still there was a big difference between the contract price and the appraisal value. Now at that point, a few things happen. Either A, the buyers agreed to pay the difference, which in this market people are doing in droves. Yeah. When we're in a balance, buyers can either say, hey, unless you drop the price or you meet in the middle or whatever it is, we're just going to cancel and move on. So the purpose, the importance behind controlling as much of this process as possible is you just don't want the appraisal to be an issue. You want to control it and do your job as a listing agent to show and prove value. Yes. And that was really, I certainly appreciate your time, Jay, today going through this. It's a question that I think is very important. Not a lot of sellers know to ask it.
And the other thing, Joe, is now, more than ever, maybe in my 30 years, appraisals are coming in low.
Yeah.
And that's a long conversation to have, and I certainly understand it. It's a really hard market to appraise in because things are moving so fast. But the best agents are getting more involved in the appraisal process. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because people need to know that. Like, I would want to know that I'm working with an agent that is not just going to say, hey, the house is vacant on lockbox.
Right.
Because that's your window of opportunity to be impactful. And if you forego that opportunity and say, yeah, it's on lockbox, go do your thing, you're not doing the best job for your client.
Understood. And we are certainly getting paid a lot of money to do it. So again, Jay, I really appreciate it. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be I'm rolling out new videos every Thursday. Hit subscribe and cheers. Ciao for now.